Hi, everyone. It's Mark Vino with Smart Tech Research and host of the SmartTechCheck podcast. As many of you know, I attended Calix's ConneXions 23 partner event last week in Las Vegas. I got a chance to spend some time with Scott Newman, Calix's corporate vice president of corporate marketing, who shared his perspective on the importance of the event, and Brian Stading, CEO of Lumos Fiber, who discussed his company's relationship with Calix and why it has such long-term importance. Finally, Calix's Jerry Cederlin, Vice President of Supply Chain, discusses Calix's strategic decision to bring all manufacturing back into the United States. ConneXions 23 was an outstanding industry event, and I know you'll appreciate the insights in these interviews. Hi, everyone. It's Mark Vino with Smart Tech Research. I'm here with Scott Newman, the Corporate Vice President of Corporate Marketing at Calix. We're here kind of recapping the Calix ConneXions 2023 event, which was held in Las Vegas last week. And I'm here to welcome him for a short interview on what we kind of heard at ConneXions. And I'm sure, Scott, you're an exhausted man because those events are always a lot of fun. So talk to us about ConneXions. And by the way, why don't we start off with what is ConneXions for the average person who may not be familiar with that event? And I've been to several of them. What's it all about?
No, thanks, Mark, and thanks for having me.
Sure.
Think of ConneXions. It's this. I think this was our 18th year. It's a really interesting event in terms of in a sense, the tent that we pitch. We can find within our industry a series of rather large industry association events, but they tend to focus on pure telcos or electric cooperatives or municipalities, or cable providers. And so they kind of slice up the industry based on the business model. And ConneXions is all of the above. And so it's the one place where if you're a broadband provider or you're thinking about getting into broadband, you can bump into just about anybody in any size, shape, or model, including tribal communities, which became a major focus for us. And we had a number of them this year figuring out how to connect their communities. And, just a perfect example of the way that we approach it. About 2 years ago, we also retitled the focus of the conference. It used to be, like many companies, would have a user conference. And it's just their customers, and they teach them how to use their solutions. But we actually shifted it to an innovation and customer success conference. And so you don't have to actually be a Calix customer to be coming to the event. The whole purpose is for you to gather and understand best practices, not just from our own experts, but from your peers. So we spend a huge amount of time creating venues that are super conducive to networking and best practice sharing. One of our most popular sessions, and we do, probably 40 to 50 of these throughout the conference, is what we call Circles of Success, where we have a roundtable with attendees sitting around it with one Calix expert to guide the conversation, but the content and the topics are all, created and fed upon by the attendees at the table. And
Right.
So it's you and your peers that are actually diving into a specific challenge you might be facing, and then debating and sharing what are possible solutions to it and what you can take back to your teams when you leave the conference.
Well, and you know what's interesting, because I go to a ton of these conferences. I mean, I go to too many to even talk about.
I bet.
And some of the conferences are well done. Some of the conferences tend to be more technical detail, product information, why we're the greatest piece of sliced bread in the world.
Right.
And those are fine. But I vote on the four ConneXions events that I've attended, and I know there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes. I'm floored by a couple things. I mean, first of all, Calix positions itself chief and foremost as kind of a partner with the broadband service providers, the BSPs.
Sure.
And the BSP profile that you folks work with is typically small. These are not broadband service providers that service 25 million people at a pop. I mean, they service 10, 15, 25,000 people in different, generally rural parts of the country or places that are underserved. And what I hear over and over again is how Calix wants the broadband service provider to be the face to the customer. And that to me is an extraordinary thing. You hear a lot about that from other companies who have similar approaches, but it really is first and foremost, in terms of all the strategic stuff that I hear that comes out of Calix. And by the way, and I've told you this before, I think one of the most brilliant marketing decisions ever made, and I think you were involved in the decision, if not the person who drove it, was the decision around hiring Jerry D. I mean, I just think that he does an extraordinary job of humanizing technology. I wrote about him about a year ago in one of my pieces. And what's extraordinary about him is that he really is a Charles Grodin-like character who died a few years. Charles Grodin was, for those people who don't know Charles Grodin, he was a terrific understated actor. He was very droll, but he earned a very, very good living. And by the way, you got to see the movie The Heartbreak Kid, which is a great one of his early movies, but by Neil Simon, one of the great understated movies of all time. But he's a great foil because he allows you to kind of position in the technology in a very human, very often humorous way. As you get into these other categories like Smart Biz and Smart Town, I'm sure you're going to find a role for him in some of those great video spots. So I talk a little bit about that whole BSP. Hey, we want you to be successful, because if your guys are not successful, we're not successful. And there's no vanity behind it. So I'd like you to kind of comment on that.
Yeah. Well, first, I can't take credit for Jerry. That was Michael. As a fellow Canadian,
we'll give Michael credit.
So Michael Waning, was able to spot him as an up and coming talent, and we're pretty good at doing that and spotting them and then bringing them along. And it's really interesting. I mean, Jerry really, really understands our community now, and so his ability to just lean right into his character every time we do our shooting sessions in Toronto, because that's where he's based. It works out really, really well. But to your point about the approach that we take, we've always believed that the best way to tell our story is through our customers and the stories that they tell of their own success. So the lead has always been, look at, BSPX and look at what they're achieving. The subtext is, well, yeah, they're partnering with Calix. I mean, they wouldn't be on stage at the conference if, they weren't doing something with us, but that's not the lead. And it's really, in a sense, by the head fake. And the goal is for anyone attending the conference, you hear those stories and we want to inspire I want to do that. How do I do that? So much so that we now have, in the last 2 to 3 years, after every general session that we do on the Monday and the closing on Tuesday, I get, out of the woodwork, customers are saying, what do I need to do in terms of being a success story for Calix so I can be on stage next year? I want to tell my story. And so that's an embarrassment of riches for us. But we've always had this mentality of a subservient brand that it's really about them. And we're really, really careful about not only making sure their data is only their data. We have no, side agenda for what we do with it, like a Google that, is going to sell it and remarket it and so forth.
Right.
And again, also their brand. That's why we invest in, our friend Jerry D, and literally 5,000 marketing assets that are all pre-created, formatted, and loaded into a tool. So any BSP has access to, campaign ready, world-class marketing material so they can quickly get to market. And it's all designed for them to take their brand, slap it on it, and make it their own. Every Jerry D spot, you won't hear a single Calix product branded as Calix. It's all designed so they literally can just slap their logo on the bumper and take that to market with world-class talent like Jerry D. So we very much are in the boat of, we can't succeed unless our customers succeed. But you had one interesting point. You talked about how traditionally these are kind of relatively small, regional, but the way that we design our solutions, yes, they have to be at its base. We design for small and we scale up. So yeah, do we work with Verizon on their next generation PON technology? Absolutely. But that's just a proof point that we have amazing technology, but we'd never want to do it in reverse and design for an enterprise and then try to jam it into a small model. It's always from the ground up, and we've been that way from day one.
Well, so let's pivot a bit to some of the bigger announcements there. And, we were talking before the podcast began about and I love the message because it's such a powerful message that to, Mr. BSP, Mr. and Mrs. BSP,
Yes.
can't completely, hitch your wagon to faster speeds.
Right.
Faster speeds are great. Let's face it, most people, including myself, and I'm and I have very, very strenuous, internet bandwidth requirements because I do a
Sure.
podcast. I get by pretty well with 506 megabyte down.
Right.
Now that may change, of course, in the future when VR and AR comes along, and there will be
Right.
devices and applications and usage models that will suck up that extra bandwidth.
Right.
But the fact that now that you kind of guys are dovetailing into things like smart MDUs, smart multi-unit, multi-dwelling units, smart town, which is a concept you've been kind of promoting to help really kind of minimize this whole digital divide thing that I think happened pretty starkly during the pandemic.
During COVID,
and now smart biz, which is a bigger thing. It's almost kind of like expanding that smart home presence into the broader community. Let's talk a little bit about that and why that should be such an important clarion call for the BSPs.
Yeah. So the start, as Michael said very clearly on stage, speed is a start. You do need to have a future-proof, lightning fast, ideally where it makes business sense, fiber-based to the home broadband network. And you want to be designing the future, whether that's 5 gig, 10 gig, 50 gig, which is capabilities that we are starting to deploy. But that can't be your only strategy. That's the start. But now the question is, what becomes possible when you have this amazing fast broadband connectivity into the home, into the business, into the town, into the MDU? Now a whole range of capabilities become available. And you have to be willing to lean into that to address those challenges. Because if you don't, trust me, those legacy giants, they will be looking to get that BEAD funding, coming down the pipe, and they're going to be coming into your community. We have to assume that in the not too distant future, every single rural market will have at least 2 broadband providers that are showing up saying, I've got great speed. So the question is, how are you going to differentiate from that? Are you just going to go for, the $49.95, a month, for the gig? Is that really what you're going to bet your company on? Or are you going to take the next step and start developing the kind of capabilities that are actually solving the challenges of the small business, of, the landlord or the property manager for an apartment complex, of the superintendent of the school or the mayor of the town, in addition to all of the subscribers you have from a residential perspective? And that's where we continue to innovate. It's got to be on a rock solid broadband, infrastructure. But the question is, what do you build on top of that? And our goal is to make that really, really simple for you to do that.
Well, and the MDU component, which the MDU space is a vastly underserved market.
Yeah, and complicated, right?
And complicated for a whole bunch of different reasons.
A whole bunch of reasons.
But I can tell you, I've seen the research over and over again that people who rent apartments, they want to have a smart home too, and they want all the conveniences, all the capabilities. Parents who have apartments and live with kids, they want to have a relationship with technology like Bark. They want to have a camera capability like Arlo, which I another great platform that you guys have partnered with them to deploy that. So I really think that this is, you guys, it's all I'm going to invoke that the Wayne Gretzky thing. You're skating where the puck is going. And I think that's a big deal.
Well, and one of the reasons why we've got confidence in the fact that we know where the puck is going is we have, multiple customer advisory boards, whether it's our leadership advisory board, which is about 42 general managers of broadband providers on a regular basis, meeting every quarter. What are they seeing? What are the challenges that are coming? How can we help them succeed? And most of the innovation that we show up every year at ConneXions is actually driven by the customers that we're meeting with saying, what do you need next? And MDU is just one example of them saying, hey, I need a model that allows me to be flexible, whether my relationship is with the property owner, whether it's with the person managing the property, maybe it's directly with, the condo owner in a multi-dwelling unit. Every single one of those are slightly different, but I need something that can actually scale for that. I may have access to the building where I could route fiber into the wall. Maybe I don't. Maybe it's a much older building and I need to go with mounted units that can actually just cover the area without getting in, access into the old building. All of that has to be taken into consideration. That's one of the reasons why it's been a tricky, nut to crack. But,
Right.
From go-to-market councils, from customer support councils, from CFO, from tribal councils, from network engineering councils, all of these are feeding in ideas and support for where do we innovate next.
Right. And at least, but not, certainly this is a very important aspect of this, is that landlords and the entities that own apartments, it's a revenue opportunity. Hey, if
Totally. They want to run like a business.
if I have a choice between a smart apartment and a non-smart apartment, or a non-smart apartment complex, where do you think I'm going to live? So there's an opportunity there. The last topic I want to talk about, just for a couple minutes before we kind of sum up the podcast, is just talk about AI. AI is everywhere. You can't pick up a newspaper. AI.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing is, and we could we'll talk more about this in the future. The way that Calix looks at AI right now, and actually you've had some AI capabilities without calling it AI, to be very very transparent, whether it's machine learning or whatever you want to call it. How do you look at AI from why should a BSP care? I mean, again, the BSPs don't have big technology teams. They don't spend the kind of brain cycles that you folks spend it on to understand, what's the best implementation. There's data and privacy concerns, which obviously Calix has always been big about. So whatever you guys do, we'll have that kind of thing in mind. But if I'm a BSP, should I fear that? Or is it an opportunity? So maybe just a minute or so on
that. There's always a concern in moving too quickly, and we're very careful about how we approach this, especially because we are the stewards and the protectors of the data that our customers are collecting on their subscribers in the Calix cloud. So we're very, very careful, and it's a high level of trust, that we take very seriously. From a pure AI in the sense of like a chat GPT, we've got all sorts of challenges and concerns with something like that, especially when it's literally open. Like, so, most people haven't thought like, well, wait a minute. So every single idea that I put into that platform is now actually out into the public. Not to mention, I may not have any confidence in what I get back because who knows where it's pulling it from. And the interesting thing is, from my background, I spent a number of years at IBM working on the Watson technology. At the time, we were applying it to the Internet of Things. One of the frustrations back then, and this is, circa 2015, 16, 17, was we would show up to customers. And this is back, when Alexas are really starting to take off. And the concept of it's smart right out of the box was really fascinating for a lot of customers. And they said, well, why doesn't Watson just show up, smart on oncology? And it's like, well, because we don't let it loose in the internet. What we do is we give you the shell, and it's going to take time, but you need to actually train Watson on what you need it to do. And there are a lot of customers that, I don't want to take the time. I just want to ask Alexa, like, what should the diagnosis be for my patient? And it's not that simple. And what we were doing back then was, in a sense, creating a very safe walled garden. So it was only working from the data, let's say, as you were a hospital, that you were feeding it. Only the reports you wanted it to see. You weren't letting it loose on the internet, so you had full confidence. We've come full circle on this, where people are going, well, wait a minute, I can't, if I'm, perfect example, let's say, I'm Disney and I want to write a new script on Marvel characters and Star Wars and, all sorts of things. Well, if I load it into ChatGPT, I've now put all of my IP related to those properties now at risk because I've just put them out on a public cloud. Not a great idea. So you're now starting to see more and more companies show up and say, hey, we actually have a walled garden version of this, and you can actually very safely work with the capabilities, but within the universe that you wanted to get smart on. And so the end product, the potential, is our ability to make understanding the data for a BSP, their data of their subscribers, much easier to understand, to spot trends, to see where there are opportunities to provide better service, or to make sure the network is actually even more intelligent than it is today, so it can reroute and make sure that people aren't disconnected when storms hit, or a fiber line gets cut because of construction, and it knows how to manage itself. That's where we're heading with it. But they're very careful steps we've got to take to make sure that we do this right.
No, I think a deliberate approach is really the right approach to take. There's clearly potential. There's clearly opportunity, but I have full faith that you folks are going to do it in a very responsible, impactful way and kind of address all the things you talked about. So again, Scott, listen, thanks for taking the time. I look forward to Calix
Thanks, Mark.
ConneXions 2024.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking your time to be on the podcast today.
Thanks for inviting me, Mark. Happy to join.
Thanks again. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Vina with SmartTech Research. I'm here at ConneXions 2023 in Las Vegas, a great event that Calix puts on to support its partners, its broadband service providers. I'm here with Brian Stading, CEO of Lumos. Brian, welcome to our little chat today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Mark.
Sure. First of all, let's chat about Lumos. Who is Lumos and what markets do they serve?
So Lumos is a company that recently launched about September of 2021. We were formerly Lumos Networks up in Virginia, North State Telecommunications in North Carolina. They were combined to create a company called Sagra. Sagra was sold to Cox Communications, and then we spun out the residential and small business portion of that from Cox and created a company called Lumos. So this was in September of 2021. Been on an aggressive growth pattern ever since then. It's been a really exciting time. We've rebranded. We've launched a new data stack. So it's a lot going on.
And the markets you serve?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we serve Virginia, North Carolina, and we recently announced that we started construction in Columbia, South Carolina. We're going to be building in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and more to come very soon in South Carolina.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about this event itself. This is my fourth ConneXions. It's not a modest event, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's that Calix has been growing so dramatically with the strong support of the partners that it does work with. As a CEO, why is the partnership with Calix so important?
Well, Calix they're the platform for our internet, right? They are if you will, the engine that runs our fiber to the home service. So it's critical, immensely critical. It's the access to technology that we put into people's homes with the GigaSpire and provide the customer experience that we're looking for. We have chosen Calix because customers in their home think the Wi-Fi is the internet, right? And if the internet goes down, the Wi-Fi goes down, the internet goes down. Well, really, you got to have that best Wi-Fi solution. So that's been a critical piece of us, as well as the platforms that support it. But ultimately, Calix is a true partner. They are constantly innovating. They're constantly growing. They listen to customer experience extremely well, and so being part of this is helping kind of set the roadmap for what we can expect to be delivered from our partner in the future. So that's why it's so critical to be here.
Now, the interesting thing is, and this is the thing that's always struck me about Calix, and I've talked to Michael about this many times, Michael Weenie, the CEO of the company, for those of people who don't know, is that there seems to be this overall desire to really be behind the scenes from a branding standpoint, from a marketing standpoint. They really, a lot of companies say this, our partners are our success. But in this particular case, it seems to be very interesting in that just about everything I heard about this morning from Michael and from Matt is that there really is this desire to continue to build upon that. Because the reality is, you're mostly interested in stickiness. You're not looking to keep a subscriber for 6 months or a year.
Right.
You want a multi-year, a decade-long relationship with subscribers, and they of course provide the tools, they provide the capabilities that you folks can use in terms of your marketing work. But talk a little bit about that, because that's the thing that's always struck me about Calix. It kind of differentiates itself from other companies.
Yeah, not to go too far down history lane, but I was here when Carl Russo announced that this is we're going to be a software company, we're going to be a platform.
You're an
company.
old man.
I've been around a long time. I've been around a long time, but I was here when he made that formal change in strategy, and everybody's like scratching their head. Is like, really? Is that where we're going to go here? And it's without question been a tremendous success. Michael's taken it to the next level, and we're doing. But there is no question about it. And Carl would say it back then. We want to help. Calix wants to make sure that you don't be commoditized as a BSP.
Yes.
Right. He's really. That was his mission. Michael's on that same mission. The entire team is so. They are doing everything they possibly can to ensure that we're not commoditized as a broadband service provider, and I couldn't agree with him more. So.
Well, and he put up it was either Matt or Michael put up the stunning slide. I think it was Matt, in that even if you kind of tear things out, the number of people who are subscribing to gigabyte or faster speeds is actually relatively low. Now, that's not to say that one day there will be applications, I'm thinking more of AR and VR and some more advanced stuff that will require speeds like that.
Right.
But if you focus on speed as your only differentiator, it's kind of I'll use an old World War II phrase, like a baton death march type of thing from a commoditization and from a pricing standpoint. So what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I didn't want, because I agree. Well, I gotta be careful how I say this. No, I'm not gonna say that, but I am gonna say this. We don't really focus on advertising speed. We focus on advertising value, and and how we can impact people's lives and change people's life. I will tell you, our gig subscription for our new customer service is significantly higher than what the rest of Michael's, whoever he surveyed on that. So I actually believe those numbers, but I can just tell you, we actually provide a value proposition that makes the gig attractive to our subscribers, and we work very hard to make sure that we attach the Gig Aspire to it, right? Because you don't have to have the Gig Aspire. You can go to Best Buy or whatever, but we really think that's the best CPE. And my whole view is that, it doesn't cost us any more to provide a gig than it does 200 meg or 500 meg. So if somebody's willing to pay a gig for it, that's good for us. So.
Well, and what was really amazing, frankly, was those net promoter scores that were put up there. Is that, the broadband industry as a macro, I would argue that the IRS probably has higher net promoter scores, and I'm probably being kind.
Right.
But, he put numbers up there that numbers were eclipsing Apple, which blew me away, frankly. Yep. And to me, that says that the tools that Calix bring to market are valued by folks like you, but also allow you to create this very intimate customer relationship that's really hard to replicate.
It really is. Well, that is the differentiator, right? And I tell everybody, technology is technology at the end of the day. And everybody says, well, can you do 5 gig? Yeah, we can do 5 gig. Can you do 10 gig? Yeah, if we really want to do 10 gig, we could do 10 gig. But but it really is that customer experience that goes along with the service that you're providing. So that is the relationships that our employees build with their customers. It's providing this technology that's easy to use with the platform, given the Protect IQ and Experience IQ and things like that really make it easier and more effective for people to manage their home life in terms of the Wi-Fi associated with it. So it really is about simplifying and making people's lives easier. And the internet has become such a crucial thing, right? The pandemic really kind of set it off and highlighted it, and it just continues to grow, and I think it will for our foreseeable future.
Last question for you. We hear a lot about AI, AI, and I'm actually on a panel tomorrow, which will be a fun panel to kind of chat about this with some other industry luminaries. Yeah. The thing that's interesting to me is what's your perception in terms of, and this is a macro statement, at some point, do you think that and we got to be careful about differentiating AI from Gen AI, because I think there's a lot of confusion there, and I'm going to talk about that a bit tomorrow during my panel. In fact, people think everything is ChatGPT, and obviously AI is much, much bigger. Yeah. Do you see potential in AI at some point?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think like anything else, right? Any new technology, AI is going to have a tremendous potential to simplify things, streamline things. There's going to be pitfalls too, like any technology, right? Potentially, and maybe it doesn't come out to be everything everybody's talking about right now. But we're not underestimating it, to be honest with you. So we're watching it very closely. We know there's AI going in some of the Calix products and some of the other things that we're doing. So we are watching it very, very closely. because I don't think you can underestimate it from our perspective. And so, yeah, there's no doubt that'll be. But the more important thing is you see all these data centers that being built. I mean, the expansion in the data center from an infrastructure funding perspective is huge, and it's all being funded by AI or driven by AI. So as long as they need more fiber, I'm all for it.
Well, and I will tell you, as someone where my offices are in the San Jose area,
Okay.
and I can tell you that every single silicon company, even companies that really don't have an AI play, they're all betting the farm on AI. Now that's both good.
Yeah.
I think there's some not greatness and that type of thing, but the Valley has made a bet, and AI is going to be there, and it's good to hear that you obviously strategically think there's some value there.
For sure.
But Brian, thank you for your time. Appreciate you participating on my little interview today, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Mark Vena with Smart Tech Research. I'm here again at ConneXions 2023, Calix's premier partner event. It's been a lot of fun for the last couple of days. I'm here with Jerry Cederland. Did I pronounce it, Jerry, the right way?
That's correct, yes.
I win a prize for pronouncing it properly. Jerry is the SVP of the supply chain organization at Calix, obviously a very, very important guy. As I said before the podcast began, the unsung hero of Calix in terms of the way that they provide product to their partners. But Jerry, we're here at the show. Give us your perspective on the event itself, any things you've heard. This is my 4th year at the show. It's a spectacular event, really it's a very, very, I thought that the presentations today were magnificent. There was a presentation by Stephen Covey that was terrific about trust, which I thought was great. But what are you hearing, and what are your thoughts about the event?
Yeah, I mean, I've been coming here for 3 years myself. I'm amazed at the scope of the event, the amount of people. And what really thrills me are the customer stories. The individual stories of the things that our customers do. And this is what we take back and what inspires people in the supply chain to just work hard and make it happen. And
truth be told, I mean, the equipment that goes into the subscriber's house, the equipment that's built in the infrastructure from an implementation standpoint, those are crucial pieces. I mean, you had some, like many companies over the last few years during the pandemic, you guys had some challenges. You worked through them, but any reflections on that experience? You probably don't want to go through it again, but any thoughts?
No, obviously we don't want to go through it again. That's true. I think the main thing is that we need to learn that the world's changed a little bit in terms of trust, in terms of how things work. So we can't have a just-in-time supply chain. We need more of a just-in-case supply chain. Mm-hmm. So we put enough of a forecast out there, and we take enough risk with our suppliers and take enough volume from them to protect capacity and make sure that we don't go through that again when the next thing happens, which it will at some point.
Now, there was some big news before the event itself. A couple of weeks ago, Calix announced this great arrangement with Jabil, one of your chief builders of contract manufacturers. Talk about that, the strategic importance of it. It's obviously a very important thing, just being a great American like you are. Right? It's great that Calix is actually bringing a lot of that manufacturing completely within the United States. But let's talk about that announcement for those people who haven't heard, and talk about why it's so important to Calix.
Yeah, so we went to Auburn Hills, Michigan, where the Jabil facility is located, and we announced that to comply with Build America, Buy America requirements for the BEAD program, the Broadband Equity and Access Deployment Program, that we would build OLTs, optical modules, and ONTs in the United States. And we've chosen a selection of SKUs that'll solve most of our customers' problems, and we're also open to adding SKUs to that. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to go beyond the BEAD program. I'd like to continue building in America for the next 30 years.
Right. What are you hearing from clients, specifically when you meet with them? I'm sure you've had tons of meetings over the last couple of days. What are you hearing them in terms of concerns, not just about doing work with Calix, but what are some things that keep them up at night?
I think, everybody's worried about geopolitics. Everybody's worried about what would happen if China and Taiwan get involved in something that's, not, aggression of any way. So people would like to know that we are building a sustainable supply chain, both in terms of green and in terms of long-term resilience. And I assure them that we are. We have plans to bring product, near-shoring product or friend-shoring product. But Asia will always be there to some extent because it's a very competitive market. A lot of the electronic supply chain is established there, but they just would like to hear that I have enough of it over here to protect them in case of something happens. So we're working on that, include in this BEAD program announcement as part of that whole strategy.
Are you hearing from the BSPs, and obviously supply chain is such a crucial piece of their business because without equipment they can't satisfy their customers, but what was their reaction to the Jabil announcement? My guess is they would be elated with that because at the end of the day, they're American companies too. They see the value of that as well. But can you give us a little bit of color on some of the feedback you got from them on that big announcement?
Yeah, everything to a person was positive. Very excited to see that we're building in the United States. Of course, we have rural American customers, which are patriotic, just because of the nature of living in rural America. I don't think I heard a negative word. Everyone said, including knowing it's going to cost a little bit more.
Sure.
Knowing it, hey, we are willing to step up and be part of that. So
right.
Very positive.
Any other themes that you found interesting that you've heard, even outside of supply chain? I'll let you dabble outside of the supply chain area. Well, which is always a little bit dangerous, but no, yeah, I'm sure you have some insight.
I mean, when I think of, when I first started, right, Carl and Michael and folks told me about this simplify, excite, and grow. And hard to understand that from being from outside in a big company. I was with Motorola before this in some big companies. And I said, okay, I sort of understand it, but when you get here and you start hearing customers, you really see how it works. So the smart home, the smart biz, the smart MDU, just all of those different, the stories that people are telling about how they're going to use these services just excites me, and it just, I know how much I'm going to have to build and build scale for Calix to grow so that our customers can continue to grow.
Well, let's talk about them for just a second before we conclude the interview. Is that I spent many years with Compaq. I worked for Dell for quite a bit, and Dell was the operational king of the PC space back then. And the two magic words, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, was SKU reduction, SKU reduction, SKU reduction, SKU reduction. And for those of you who don't know, many of the big technology companies, there's always a desire to limit the number of SKUs or parts, let's call it, because that reduces costs, that it helps enhance confidence about being able to deliver things in volume and hitting forecasts. But you have a bit of a challenge right now because Calix is obviously expanding their product line. They're getting into new categories like smart towns and smart businesses, and now the MDU category, smart MDUs. That's going to be a fascinating category. How do you work with marketing, which is always a great dynamic? How do you do that in such a way where you are being you want to be responsible and responsive to marketing and the business in terms of, hey, we want you to go into these line of businesses, so don't worry about limiting the number of SKUs, but doing it in such a way that is operationally efficient, and at the end of the day allows you to keep costs down as low as possible.
Well, you may be surprised by this, but again, I worked with larger companies before this, and we had 35,000 SKUs to make a network work. Calix keeps our SKU count between 280 and 330 SKUs, even with all these new markets.
That's
so we
amazing.
will repurpose a lot of the end products to do the same thing. And we're also on a platform, system-wise, hardware-wise, and software-wise. So system-wise and hardware-wise, we're using a lot of the same integrated circuits, a lot of the same components. So we don't have 35,000 SKUs and 200,000 components. We have 300 SKUs and 10,000 or so.
That is really, absolutely amazing. Given the growth and I did not know that. Given that Calix is growing that quickly with. That's not a tiny number, but certainly I would have expected it to be in the thousands. I can't believe it's under 1,000 SKUs.
I mean, you can, a good Excel person can manage it on a spreadsheet. So it's, that's part of my secret of why we have such a great supply chain. But it's our people, and it's a collaboration between us, our product line leadership team, and marketing team that works so well. I mean, we're very tightly in line with the strategy.
Well, that's great to hear. Any closing words for the audience?
I'm proud to be part of Calix. I'm proud of the BARC, that we talked a lot about BARC, right? Protecting children on the internet. I'm proud of these managed services because they just let our customers compete with the big customers, not on speeds and feeds, but on managed services, on providing more to their communities. and really doing the right thing. And I think Calix does the right thing.
No, I think that's remarkable. I mean, Michael and Matt were talking about extensively this morning during the keynotes, is that if you focus on speed, you end up in a commoditized business. And I think, to me, that's marketing 101. Mm-hmm. A lot of clients don't get that, but it looks like that, and I've been hearing that, by the way, consistently for the last several years, so it's not a new theme. But it's been a great event. I appreciate you stopping by, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. It's nice talking to you.
Thank you.